welcome everyone to this evening session on More Than Representation, Divinity School as a Minoritized Student. My name is Laura Mariko Heifetz, and I'm the Assistant Dean of Admissions, Vocation, and Stewardship at Vanderbilt Divinity School. We are recording this session, so if you miss it, it will live on Facebook Live, and we will also post it on our website after it is edited. So give us a few days on that. Our panel format is the following. I will introduce our panelists briefly, and I will ask them to then give a longer introduction. They will respond to a series of questions to get the conversation started. Please feel free to use the chat box, which is typically below, on the bar below on your screen if you're using a laptop. And you can share reactions or offer feedback. If you have questions that come up for any of the panelists or all of the panelists, please put them in the Q&A, which is also along the bottom of the bar on the app on your laptop. Questions posted in the chat may not be answered just because it is kind of difficult to keep track of them. My colleague Angela Dillon, who is an MDiv graduate of VDS and the admissions counselor, will be the chat moderator for this evening and will help me catch things I have missed. And we'll be able to answer questions that come up that she's able to handle as well. We do encourage thoughtful and respectful dialogue. Anyone engaging in any inappropriate behavior in the chat will be removed. So I'm really glad to welcome these 4 special guests joining us today. And I am actually wondering if they might be willing to introduce themselves. So here's the introduction. If you could share your name, your pronouns, your degree program, which year you are in the program, your identities, whether that's racial or ethnic or sexual orientation, whichever you like to share, and any student leadership position you might be holding, since 2 of you are right now. So I'm wondering if I could invite Horjan to start us off.
Well, thank you. Yes, my name is Horjan Hernandez. Most people call me Horjan just because they can't pronounce my name, but it is pronounced Horjan because there's an accent on the A. I am a second-year Master of Divinity student, and my concentration is chaplaincy. I identify as Latinx, Hispanic. I was born in Cuba and came to the United States when I was 9 years old. I am also Roman Catholic, and I was born and raised Catholic, and I also practice the Afro-Cuban religion of Santeria. And what am I missing? Oh yeah, so I'm the president of Latinx Seminarians as well.
Awesome, thank you. Charlotte, I'm wondering if you would be okay going next.
Sure, thank you. I'm Charlotte Van Houker, and I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm in my final year of Master of Divinity program, and I'll be soon graduating next month, that is in December, which is very exciting. It's been a 3.5-year-long journey of learning and serving in various capacities here at VDS. And I served as a worship intern for community worship services at VDS. I'm also a certified candidate for ministry and pursuing my ordination as an elder in the United Methodist Church. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me. And I'm really looking forward to having these conversations with my friends and colleagues here at VDS. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Quentin, wondering if you could go next.
Absolutely. Good evening. I'm Quentin Cox. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I am also a third-year MDiv candidate, so I'll be graduating in the spring of this year. Very happy to be on the downward slope of the program and my time here at VDS. My programs are, my concentrations are religion and economic justice, and also Black culture and religious studies. And I'm pursuing 2 certificates, the Kelly Miller Smith Institute for Black Church Studies certificate, as well as the African American Diaspora Studies certificate as well. Past president of Black Seminarians, an organization at the VDS, currently an admissions fellow and have a few other things I do or have done around VDS as well, but those are probably most pertinent to our conversation this evening. And after graduation, look forward to some sort of pastoral leadership role. But I'm also working to found a nonprofit called the Center for Urban Economic Justice that really looks at solutions for the wealth gap and economic injustices that we see across our country.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, Adrian.
Howdy, my name is Adrian White. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I am in my second year of the MDiv, so coming up on halfway through the 3-year program. I am white, PCUSA Presbyterian. I use the words bisexual, queer, trans, genderqueer, and non-binary to describe various aspects of my identities, and have not held any formal student leadership positions, although I am an admin on the 2019 cohort Facebook page. So it's pretty powerful. And looking forward to talking with everyone.
Great. The first couple of questions I have for you are, what about your VDS experience has affirmed your minoritized identities? And where are VDS growing edges in serving minoritized students? I don't know if any of you feels particularly moved to go first.
I'm fine with starting again. Yeah, so honestly, I think from like the first day that I arrived at VDS, I felt like affirmed because the president of Latinx seminarians at the time, his name's Damien, he went up to me and he was like, "Oh my gosh, I've been praying for a Latinx student and you came." And he was super excited and he took me under his wing and we got to do some really cool events together last year. So one of the events we did was during Hispanic Heritage Month, which runs from September 15th to October 15th. We did like a bilingual worship service at VDS for weekly worship, which happens each Wednesday. And we did that during the month and it turned out really well. And we did one again this year, but it was through Zoom. It turned out really well too, but not the same as in person. And then we also did a cool event last year during Hispanic Heritage Month that was like a night of Afro-Latin jazz. And we had some good music playing. We had some delicious local Mexican food. And we had, as our guest speaker, we had the new executive director of Conexión Américas, which is a really big organization here in Nashville. They help Latinx communities by, providing them English classes, helping them with jobs. They provide tutoring for kids. They do so much, like a ton of stuff. And honestly, like being in that event and knowing that like we were able to host that at VDS, like made me feel like really welcomed because it shows that we're wanting to create community with the larger Latinx community in Nashville and that we want to come together and really support this organization that helps so many immigrants in amazing ways. So I think that's the best example for that, for feeling affirmed. And then I will say like the growing edge for me is that I'm the only Latinx student in my cohort. And while I love being a voice, it's an honor being a voice for my people. I also feel like I'm very limited to what I can accomplish as the president of Latinx Seminarians. There's so many objectives that I want to accomplish as an organization. There's a lot of really cool ideas that I have about helping the Latinx community in Nashville, but there's only so much I can do as just one person, And this semester, once Eric Holness graduates, I'm going to be the only Latinx student at VDS. So, I think VDS could And I think they're trying hard to really cater to getting more Latinx students to come. And it is a challenging demographic just because so many Latinx students tend to go to seminaries or divinity schools that are affiliated with their church tradition. So it is kind of hard to target that demographic in that way. But I do hope that in the future we are able to, get better at recruiting or inviting more Latinx students to come to VDS.
Well, maybe I could go next. Well, mostly for me, my VDS experience has been really personal, liberative, and affirming in many ways. And two of the prominent ways I can share in this platform is, first off, as a first generation Asian American Christian woman, my immigrant experience is part of my identity. It's very valuable to me. And so my Indian heritage, my roots as Indian woman, and also what it means to be an American, and also the multiple identities that I live into and the roles that I play as a wife, mother, daughter, and all the other multiple identities that I play. It's hard to navigate through these roles. And so when I stepped into this space at Vanderbilt Divinity School, Vanderbilt VDS really became a sacred and a safe space for me to express myself freely. And I think so that was very liberating for me because I was really hoping for the space to become that. And when I stepped into this, and this really came alive for me in the classroom settings. When I saw that it's not VDS doesn't just hold diverse body of students, but also the faculty and staff are made up of diverse body. And so I was really inspired and empowered in a way to see even the teaching assistants were of ethnic minorities. And that was empowering for me. So that was really surprising for me as well. People from Persian, Iranian, and different ethnicities, and representation of those means a lot to me. And so that was kind of a very freeing for myself of when I was navigating through all these identities for myself. Most of it, I would say that VDS also became for me where I developed a lot of deeper relationships and friendships with my friends and colleagues, in coffee hour, in hallways, with staff and faculty. We just sit and talk about, and I find this really a genuine authenticity of, building relationships. And that's what matters for me as a person. And definitely learning and growing throughout these 3 years have challenged and really affirmed my personhood. And so I really feel blessed to be a part of this community. The second thing I wanted to share was VDS education has really affirmed my voice. My voice, it has nurtured my voice, empowered my voice as an Asian American Christian woman in ministry. And I feel this credit even goes to the faculty, the rigorous teaching and training that acquired through the staff and the faculty. But also I would really commend writing tutors, have been such a resourceful help for me because, as English as a second language, having these resources and, which are intentional, so really helped me to voice my opinions. And, writing tutors could understand my perspectives as an ethnic minority and really challenged me in a way to voice my opinions, to put those in writing, boldly, and come out with those strong opinions, which I was really initially, I used to be very afraid and scared. But this environment really helped me to kind of boost that energy in me. And so I feel it has really helped me in many different ways, in many affirming ways.
I can go next. So thanks for the question. Again, as I think about what has been affirming for me as a minoritized individual at VDS, for me, it really began as I was researching the Divinity School itself, and read a lot of things, talked to several people, visited the school during an event that took place. But I found that in the purposes and commitments, this document that's online that talks about sort of who VDS aims to be and how they aim to show up and what is the work that they valued as an organization. I saw very strong language around understanding the experience of Black people and Black Christians in this country. I also saw a variety of ways in which VDS was dealing with issues of social justice and social injustices, and really kind of merging this intersection between faith and justice, with a lens that looked at specifically in some cases what was going on relative to Black people in this country. So for me, that was the first place where I felt this sense of affirmation and the sense of my identity, my story, my narrative, my background, my experiences would matter, would be embraced, and would be treated with care as I began my divinity or theological educational process. Once I arrived at VDS, there was this group called Black Seminarians, which was an organization that was student run, student led, and there were folks who had similar experiences that I had. Who gathered and talked about and dealt with issues, whether they be related to the school or related to society in general, or just sort of life, and gave us space to really process through and understand how we might navigate this moment in time. Again, whether there were social issues or issues that took place or were directly related to the Divinity School itself. The third way I would say for me was seeing the representation in the faculty. VDS probably has one of the largest African American faculty bases among divinity schools in this country. And so that was, very affirming for me to be able to see people, like myself, or to learn from people who understood my unique experience and my unique way of thinking about the world, and helping me to kind of navigate through the biblical text and its history, and just all of those things that were, I think, easier to do or to work with because we had similar backgrounds or similar understandings of the way of the world. As I think about where there are growing edges, I go back to those purposes and commitments, and I would say that they are in fact aspirational, right? It is how we see ourselves at our best. And we know that we're not there. We know that there are areas in there are gaps, and that there are places where we do not fully and completely live up to what is written in those documents or in those words. I think that there's some places where you have sort of non-minoritized faculty members, for example, who have been trained and educated in white institutions by predominantly white instructors for the most part, who are oriented toward a very white canon of academic work, materials, and knowledge bases. And sometimes, those folks bring only their experience and only that canon to the classroom to then lead students through various points of content. And, like you will find in perhaps most PWIs, there are classes and cases where you don't get that lens or you don't get that view from other ways of thinking or experiencing the world. Now, again, because there are faculty members here who do share that experience, it's always possible to then go and have side conversations and to have side discussions around this content and this material to help sort of bridge that gap. But that is, right, sort of an additional burden that I place on myself to be able to do. And I think that as we encourage every faculty member in this environment to really research and think about what it means to live into those commitments in their own way, in their own classes, beyond perhaps their own comfort levels, that we'll get better at what that looks like.
Awesome. I'm so grateful for what my colleagues have shared so far. To start, I'll say one of the things that led me to choose Vanderbilt as my site of theological learning was that I really did not want to be the first out trans student to ever matriculate at my school, which would have been the case at a lot of places. In fact, I am one of 6 trans students in my cohort, which in a cohort of like 65 is pretty good math. I am very rarely the only trans person in a class or a space, and certainly never the only queer person in a class or a space, which has allowed me to feel confident in speaking from my perspective versus feeling like I have to speak for all LGBTQIA plus individuals. So that has been something that has allowed me to dig deeper into the things that I'm interested in, and to be specific, which to me is really, really exciting. Similar to what Quentin was saying, the faculty and staff has many folks who are in the LGBTQIA plus community, or who are very familiar with and committed to, you know, the challenges and needs of that student population. I think about, you know, when I was looking for a field ed placement, Professor Matson, who's the director of field ed education, you know, really talked with me through the options I was considering, because she wanted, as much as I did, to be in a place where the fullness of who I am and my gifts would be recognized and treasured, and where I wouldn't be having to push against, you know, barriers to even being seen so that I could do the work that I was there to do. And so just things like that that kind of permeate all aspects of the program, you know, from admissions all the way through, is really special. I mean, if you're watching this and you're applying at several schools, you know that it's rare to have a faculty that is, and a staff that is so diverse across so many different axes of life experience and identity. Something that is exciting is that I have been able to, well, sort of two things. On the one hand, I've been able to write papers for classes or do projects for classes that looked at very specific aspects of queer experiences. And that was something that was embraced by my professors. So for my New Testament class, I wrote my my term paper about looking at a text in Luke and the ways that I saw a theology that affirmed medical transition for transgender people. And I got an A on that paper because my professor read it for what it was, and was willing to engage with ideas that she may or may not have encountered before, but that was in no way a barrier to her embracing the work that I was doing. On the other hand, I never feel like I'm expected to only be interested in queer stuff. I don't feel pigeonholed or limited to doing work that is through a queer theological or biblical studies lens, because there are so many of us doing so many different things. And so it's kind of good in both directions in that way. As far as ways to grow, you know, I think any institution is going to still be in the process of living out its values when it comes to trans inclusion in particular. A lot of the faculty are not great with non-binary pronouns, for example. There's a lot of gentle reminding emails that have to go out sometimes. But it never feels like a fight. It just feels like a process. And so, you know, I kind of knew coming in that no institution was going to be perfect, and so I didn't have that expectation. But sometimes it gets frustrating. But I feel like it's a frustration that is part of something that's in progress. And so that is, it's all right, you know. Another thing is I would love to see more coursework that's specifically looking at LGBTQIA plus biblical and theological studies. I am taking queer theology in the spring, which I'm very excited about, but it's the first course that's been offered in my time at BDS so far that has like been a specifically queer lens. It has shown up in many other classes in many other places, but that specificity sometimes feels like it's not as centered. Although we have many faculty that incorporate queer studies into what they're doing. It's not always front and center when it comes to the course schedule. Oh, something that I wanted to say in the first part was that the other thing that really excited me about VDS was being able to be in a community that was diverse in many, many ways. And that has enriched my learning so much, to be in a community of folks who are seeing the world and seeing God in so many ways. I have had the benefit of really grappling with these questions with friends and colleagues who are bringing totally different viewpoints and lenses across, whether that's denominational background, race, geography, language. There's all these things that we get to bring to our work together, which I think is what makes a divinity school, a really special thing, especially this one.
Thank you all. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what kind of resources, whether it's program or community or co-curricular or non-curricular, are available at Big VU as well as BDS for the parts of your identity that you feel like could use some resources or surprised you with some resources. And you can popcorn this.
Yeah, so I'll take that one to begin with. So, relative to African American students, there are a number of things that Big VU has because it is also an undergraduate institution and it has a variety of professional institutions. So first, there's what we call the BCC, or the Black Cultural Center. That is sort of a center on campus that it works to engage Black students in a variety of ways, from providing a safe space to just go and study or to get away or to meet and congregate, to offering opportunities for life coaching or other gatherings. It can be workout gatherings or yoga gatherings or a comedy night here or there. Just any number of things sort of continue to foster this sense of community and to bring some level of comfort and familiarity with the Black experience to Black students. Because it is an undergraduate institution, the Divine Nine are represented on campus, and there are times where there are events that the Divine Nine is engaged in. There are a number of other professional groups. OB-GAPS, for example, is the organization of Black professional graduate students. I think I got that backwards, Black graduate and professional students. And then there's just a number of other organizations like that on campus. I would say the other thing that the campus has to offer, which I think is really unique, is that we are able to take classes outside of the Divinity School. And so, for example, I mentioned beforehand that I'm getting a certificate in African American and Diaspora Studies. That's actually being offered by the department called the African American and Diaspora Studies Department. And so I've been able to take classes within that department and within their body of work and study, and to learn from their scholars things that have application within my studies at the Divinity School, but that are not directly taught within the Divinity School. There have been other classes I've taken, a slave religion course that looked at the history of slavery in this country and how religion was a part of the life of enslaved people throughout that entire process. Again, a class that has direct implications to the work that I want to do, but is not necessarily within the body of expertise that we have right there within the Divinity School. So for me, those are a couple of ways that being at a larger institution have been helpful for me in my work and comforting my identity, if you will.
I think so. Just echoing what Quinton said about the various courses that are offered outside of the school. I think so that is really an added a facet to this VDS institution. But also, like, I was just for Asian communities, Asian American students, and this would be another growing edge maybe at the Div School for really coming up with something that. As far as my knowledge, I have this, what we have is the International Student Association. And I think so that has been a wonderful gathering, like small group gatherings. One of the faculty member hosts, and so it's a get-together time. I've just been to one of those, but it was a wonderful time. And but also there are some Asian studies that are offered at interreligious courses that are offered at Div School. Hinduism, Buddhism, and different religious studies. So I'm just thinking about those are a couple of other ways that could be, you could be thinking about.
I'll jump in. So for LGBTQIA plus students, VDS has GABLE, which I think is an acronym that no longer is used because now it's just GABLE. But that's the LGBTQIA plus students group, which is really like a fellowship group. We'll do, you know, like last year they did what they called Gable Gobbles, which was just come be queer together and eat snacks, which, you know, snacks are very good. And sometimes they would provide the snacks, which was always an A+ situation. On campus, there's the Casey Potter Center, which is actually Nashville's only LGBTQIA plus center, because the citywide center closed. I don't know the exact backstory there, so don't quote me. But that the Casey Potter Center on campus does like an absolutely incredible range of programming, resource support, support groups, you know, book clubs. I mean, they kind of do some of everything, and they're very responsive to what students are interested in, which is cool. And they also tend to have a VDS intern, which is awesome. One of our cohort mates is doing her internship there right now. And it's also, I mean, not right now, but in general, it's also an awesome just hangout spot, with, you know, big comfy couches and cool people coming in and out all the time. So those are kind of the main things. I will add that another way that I think VDS is really strong is in supporting students from many different denominational and religious backgrounds. There's designated faculty support for Presbyterian students, for Methodist students. There are faculty supports for Jewish students. And so, you know, and I could go on. And so I think that's something that I was worried about coming in. The PCUSA ordination requirements are elaborate. And I was worried, like, well, should I just go to a Presbyterian seminary? Because they'll definitely know how to, like, you know, wiggle me through the process. But that hasn't been a problem at all. I've been really grateful to have my faculty advisor, Dr. HB, and other faculty as well, who have kind of been mindful of those needs for students. And I know that other classmates would say the same. And so it's not exactly what we're here to talk about, but I wanted to throw it in as, you know, a way that we tend to all be different from each other, but the school makes sure to give us the resources to support the classes and the access that we need to be successful if we are on a ordination or otherwise denominationally affiliated track. I think that's all I have to share.
Yeah, I know for me, I am getting my certificate in Latin American Studies. So a certificate, in case you're curious, functions a lot like a concentration. So you take 4 classes basically, and the 4 classes can be, 2 of them can be within your department, and the other 2 can be outside of your department, or you can take all 4 classes outside of the department. So every semester, the Latin American Studies program offers, like, I think it's something from like 40 to 50 different classes. It's a lot, like throughout the whole Divinity school. The whole Vanderbilt University. And it's just amazing classes. Like, they range from history department to anthropology to like nursing school. Like, they offer all sorts of classes that are specifically about Latin America, or that have sections in the classes that are about Latin America and Latinx communities. And so far last year I took my first class for the certificate. It was history of Cuba and the United States. And it was an amazing class. I mean, I knew a lot of the information already, but it was great. I learned a lot. And I was the only grad student in the class. The rest of the students were undergrad. So it was cool, like, interacting with undergrads and like getting to know like their side of things. Like, what's it like to study at the Ivy League of the South? And and they were all very stressed. And yeah, and then this semester I'm taking my second class for the certificate, and it's in the Divinity School with Dr. Segovia. He's Cuban as well, and he is teaching a class called A Political Biblical Criticism. And in that class, we talk a lot about liberation theology, a movement that started in Latin America, and basically how the Bible was used to, um, fight against systems of oppression in Latin America, and a lot of these movements that started revolutions in Latin America. And so it's been a really great class so far. And another requirement for the certificate is that you partake in an activity each semester, an event hosted by the Certificate in Latin American Studies. And they have like 5 events each week. So like there's a bunch of options, and they have some really cool events. I went to one last semester that was super fun. It was like a cocktail party. It was a cocktail party for like networking. So it was to help connect PhD students and other grad students with each other and with Latinx leaders in Nashville. And it was a really cool event. I met some amazing people, talked to some really cool people there. And so that's mainly the way that I get plugged in. Class of the Certificate of Latin American Studies, they also they do a summit each semester that brings in all the graduate organizations, Latinx organizations, and all the undergraduate Latinx organizations. And they come in and they feed us, first of all, which is the best part. Free food, I'm there. They feed us, and then we sit down and talk like, what's our plan for next semester? How can we collaborate with other Latinx organizations around campus? And it's really cool. We were actually planning, before COVID hit, we were planning to do a slam poetry event with I think it's called the Indigenous Students Organization. And it ended up not happening because of COVID. But it's just an example of like, we're able to collaborate with other really cool organizations. And yeah, I think that's the main way that I get plugged in. There's the Latina Studies program as well. And they offer a certificate, but I haven't met anyone that is doing that program. I know they offer less classes than class does, but I'm sure they offer some really great resources as well.
Dean, if I could just add on one other real quick tidbit. So there are a couple of other things that I haven't necessarily leveraged. One being the Women's Center. There's a Women's Center on campus that provides resources and information for women with a variety of concerns or needs. There's a counseling center that's on campus as well that graduate students are able to sort of go and take advantage of. I believe they provide up to 6 free counseling sessions for folks as they're kind of navigating through, and then they have some resources to refer folks to a longer term relationship if they need that for their particular needs. I think the other benefit of being, at Big VU is that there's a lot of work study opportunities. So for folks who are looking for ways to help fund or pay for their education, there are a variety of work study opportunities as well as fellowships that students can apply to participate in and to take advantage of. And then certainly there are cafeterias on campus that you can leverage that are a little bit lower cost than eating in restaurants around the campus, as well as recreation resources. You can't tell that I'm rocking a dad bod here via Zoom, and so the recreation centers aren't necessarily my thing, but certainly they provide an opportunity. And again, because Vanderbilt is a well-resourced institution, many of those services are quite, I would say, superior in what they're able to offer.
Another question is, what are some other opportunities you maybe haven't had a chance to mention yet to build community within your specific communities?
Yeah, I know one that the Black Seminarians were hoping to take advantage of this past year, but when COVID-19 hit last spring, a lot of things were just sort of, obviously, pushed to the side or halted. We were actually looking forward to taking a day trip down to Montgomery, Alabama, to visit the lynching memorial and to together kind of collectively as a cohort of students who have this common background and this common understanding of the world, to go and just experience that. Some folks had already been there before, some folks had not been there before, but to kind of take our personal experiences, to take what was happening in the world around us at that point in time, to take what we've been studying in class theologically, and to bring it all to bear in a moment where we could just share in taking in what it means to be Black in America and to have this common experience of this heinous history of lynchings. Perhaps that's on the heavier side or the weightier side of how we might develop some of that community. But that's certainly one of the ways that we were looking to do that last year. We also held on a regular basis something called, taco, let's see, First Friday Taco Night, I think is sort of what it ended up being called. So Eric Holness, who's been referenced by Horton earlier, is an African American and Latinx student, and so he was able to provide cross-cultural food, I guess you might say. And we had a great time of socialization, every month, just to kind of gather and again process through, what it meant to be at Vanderbilt Divinity School, the highs, the lows. To play some cards every once in a while, and I think some folks may have even imbibed a little, but I don't know. I can't confirm or deny that took place.
One thing that comes to mind for me about community building is worship. As Horjan alluded at the beginning, sometimes different student affinity groups will kind of do a worship takeover and provide music, prayer, and a sermon that is particular to a group's concerns, theologies, etc. So for example, tomorrow is the Trans Day of Remembrance worship service, which will be led entirely by trans students, including the preaching. And I think that is a way to build community and also to share community, because ultimately we are part of this larger organism of VDS. And so it's wonderful to have ways to offer a little bit of ourselves to each other through offerings like that. And those are continuing even on Zoom. And so I think that that's one thing that comes to mind. The other thing I'll add is I've been really surprised by some of the ways that I've built community, both within my identities, but also in other ways. I took Hebrew my first semester, and there were about 10 of us who were sort of fighting our way through the first semester of Hebrew, and we would go to the library almost every week after class one day and just like kind of power through the homework. We really relied on each other and built really strong friendships that have lasted beyond our Hebrew trials and tribulations. And so I think that community is such a core value at VDS, and that has emerged for me in so many ways that I never could have predicted. So that's been pretty cool.
Yeah, I would just add to that, Adrian, thank you for highlighting the worship aspect for it, because that for me was definitely a connectional way of, getting to know, other students and, faculty and staff. But that really came to me when I was working as a worship intern of, this ecumenical ways of, conducting worship for different, how can we get people, community building was a big thing that we were trying to do that in a small group of leaders, coming together. But also, like, I was just thinking more of how can we foster kind of, really a dialogue or a leadership development programs, like, through connections, mentoring, or, like learning and support groups, where we can just have this maybe a storytelling platform, of each one, coming from different diverse groups, telling stories in a small group. So that could be definitely like another growing edge, or, building community, which I think so VDS really does pull in a lot of resources for doing that.
Yeah, well, if it hasn't become clear yet, two things I love: music and food. I love some good Hispanic food and some amazing salsa and bachata. Last semester, I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks before the pandemic, something like that. It was like right before our spring break. and I'm so glad we did this. So this wasn't like a Latinx seminarian event, but I was like, oh my gosh, I really want to like hang out with my cohort because like we're all really close. Like we all like hang out all the time. And I was like, oh, it'd be really cool to go out dancing together, and ended up being like maybe 15, 20 people with like their spouses came, and we enjoyed a night of bachata dancing and some salsa dancing, and that was amazing. And it's like I'm so grateful that it happened like right before COVID too, because it's like the memory that I hold on to for when we return one day when this is all behind us, hopefully. So yeah.
One day we will again be in a room of 300 people touching each other and sharing margaritas. I
Yeah.
know this will happen. I am
Adrian was
ready in
there.
my spirit.
They have
It
some
was
moves.
awesome.
They have some moves.
Question came in on the Facebook stream. How many of you moved to come to VDS, and where did you move from?
So I did not move, so I will pass.
Yeah, I moved from Florida, as you can see, the flag behind me. Yeah, I moved from Central Florida to Nashville. I'm back here since the pandemic with family, but I'll be returning to Nashville in January, fingers crossed. Yeah, and you know, it was a tough transition. I've never lived out of state. I went to UF for undergrad. So it was a hard transition, but you know, I got used to it, and I'm really grateful for my cohort because like we all became very close, like very quick, and so very like quickly, like VDS became my home away from home, you know.
So I'm basically from here, Nashville, local. Okay.
I moved to Nashville from Dallas, Texas, with my spouse and our amazing dog. So it was very much kind of uprooting our little family and moving 800 miles away. But I think that also kind of what Horjan was saying, like inspired me to really look for my people here, and I definitely found them. I think I would say probably at least half of the cohort is of my cohort at least is folks who moved here from somewhere else. Maybe even more. There's just a lot of folks who I'm not sure where they're from. I would say most people are coming to Nashville in order to attend VDS. Laura can probably give you like a stat, but that is my impression, is that most people are new to Nashville and looking for, you know, people to go find restaurants with, or in this case, go find parks to sit in 10 feet apart from each other in. Great parks for sitting far apart from your friends in Nashville, I will tell you. And so, yeah, that's definitely, but there's also people who have, you know, lived here for 4 years. So it's a mix.
In the latest incoming class, the top draw was from the state of Tennessee, but it wasn't just Nashville area. There are folks who kind of live around, and some folks did move. And then I think the states after that were Kentucky, which I think you would expect, some folks from Georgia, some folks from Florida, and some folks from Illinois, more than you would think from California, folks from Texas. So it honestly is a pretty good spread. I'm trying to think, the person who, the Carolinas always send folks as well. There's a person from Oregon in the class that Adrienne Horjan came in with. So it's not so odd to move from out of state. And I'm also not from here. So I, of course, have a lot of commentary to share and some pro tips. And folks who've lived here a long time are great about helping you out with navigating the city.
And just know as well, we have several international students. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say the exact same thing. Go for it.
Yeah, so we have several international students as well. So in each of the cohorts, you know, my cohort, we've had students from Korea, from, I believe, Switzerland, but I could be wrong. But a variety of places around the world, and that also I think adds this element and this dynamic to the academic work and to this relationship building and to the work of justice. Because in those situations, every American student becomes sort of the cultural a member of the dominant culture. And so, how do we then practice engaging and being warm toward those who might be considered members of the marginalized culture, right? So, whatever our background and understanding of the world is, we have a chance to sort of practice this justice making, even there in the classroom in that way.
And it looks like there's someone with a hand up, and I am going to ask you to talk if you have something to say. But you would have to unmute yourself, or you can also put it in the chat. Oh, it's an error. It happens. Don't worry about it. No worries. All right. Well, I want to thank you all for being part of this panel and sharing so honestly about your experiences with us. I'd also like to thank those of you who attended the panel. Obviously, we're all available to you. If you do have questions that you'd rather ask of folks individually. If you're curious about us, you can learn more at divinity.vanderbilt.edu. You can set up some virtual visits. We do not have virtual visits scheduled during December and January since there are not really classes. There's just a few, but we'll resume class visits, especially in February. But in the meantime, you can talk to any of us. You can reach out on that divinity.vanderbilt.edu site. There are some different ways to get to us, and you can learn about some upcoming webinars and all of that. So thank you so much. I hope everyone has a great evening, and please stay safe out there.